Hi, everyone. For those of you that are just joining, I'm seeing that we've got loads of folks on the line, so welcome. And you might see loads of messages in the chat, and that's because we want to welcome you by asking you to introduce yourselves in the chat, tell us your word of the year. So feel free to continue doing that in the chat as we get folks joining, but I think we'll go ahead and kick off. So welcome. We are super excited to have you today. My name is Noreen Sanjwani. I'm head of consulting at Impatient Health, and I am super privileged and pleased to have with me Paul Sims, who is going to walk us through and tell us all about his crazy, wild predictions for 2023. So Paul, just for the group, it would be great to have you introduce yourself. Tell us, who are you and why do you do predictions?
Thank you, Nora, and I really appreciate you being here. Really appreciate all of you listening in. Yeah, I always forget to introduce myself, so apologies. Thank you for the reminder. I'm Paul. I started Impatient Health just over 2 years ago, and we're a pretty excited bunch of people who are really trying to make our industry more ambitious and creative. That's our purpose. We believe that the industry is young. It's not a mature industry. It is highly unevolved, and we obviously have so much potential yet to fulfill. So thank you so much for being here for what has become a bit of an institution, a bit of an annual event, and I'm really excited to get going.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Paul. And I already see in the chat that folks are saying, we all know Paul. So it's great to see folks, friendly faces as
Apparently
well.
Some people don't know me, and it's very arrogant to assume that they do. So
Exactly. So tell us, first of all, why do we do these predictions? What is going on here? What are you thinking in your head?
I can see people saying, Paul who? Firstly, it's a very popular session. I think we've got about 1,500 people, maybe close to 2,000 signed up for this, which is pretty good considering I didn't really do any marketing. I think it's something that our industry does increasingly want to know. And I suppose part of my motivation is when I kind of think about the real innovators that we often idealize, or we think about people like Henry Ford, who said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they'd have said faster horses. If we ask David Bowie, sorry, damn chat window's in the way of my screen here. David Bowie said, don't play to the gallery, essentially. So never play to the gallery. It's terribly dangerous to fulfill other people's expectations. And Steve Jobs said that most of us don't actually know what we want as customers until you show it to them. So I suppose there's this desire to be bold and to not rely on market research, and I think that predictions are a massive part of that. But I also want to talk about someone who has influenced me quite a lot over the last few years, and that is a friend of mine called Brian Smith, Professor Brian Smith. He's written a couple of books. And what he does is he uses evolutionary theory to understand what the future of our industry is going to look like, and in particular Darwin's medicine, which came out in 2016, I believe, was very clear in how it could actually, not just as a metaphor, but literally you can apply evolutionary theory just as well to the world of business as you can to the world of biology. And it's amazing how strong some of his predictive force can come through being able to understand all of that. And I thought I'd just quickly tell you some of the things that Brian said in a recent video that I just watched. Strategies, by definition, are future-oriented. They have to work in a world that hasn't yet arrived. So another reason, of course, why predictions are absolutely key. Strong strategy must knowingly anticipate the future market. Weak strategies are based on the past or simple extrapolations of the present, and they're often overtaken by change that has not been anticipated. This is especially true, of course, in life sciences, where it takes a long time to develop products, and the market environment is going to always change over the course of development. Forecasts, which is what we rely on most of all today, are often using historical data, but they don't allow for the complexity of the market. If there's anything you could say about life sciences, it is complex. It's very hard to predict. It's like the weather and other natural systems. So we absolutely need to take more of an ecosystem approach as opposed to a linear approach. And that's why evolutionary theory, which of course does take different ecosystems into account, is literally the right way to determine the future of our industry. So what I want to do is to just be very clear that that is the smart approach to doing things. And what I'm trying to do, I guess, is thinking about the evolutionary theory. Any biologist in the room will be familiar with the phylogenetic tree, which of course is how we typically map organisms. There's a simple version of it there and a slightly more complex and larger version there on a bigger scale. But if you look at the sort of evolutionary forces, you can see obviously it's perfectly natural that we think of the present at the bottom of the tree, where we are today, and the future right at the top. And what I guess I'm trying to do with my predictions and why we do this session is to apply what biologists would call mutation pressure, the actual force that encourages mutations to occur and for us to develop from what we've been as a sort of singular species into a multi-cellular, multi-adapted species, each one obviously rooted to a particular habitat that it works in. And that's the evolution of the industry that I want to see. I think that we're all, of course, we've changed a lot, particularly over the last decade, but we're still a very young industry in evolutionary terms because we're all so similar as pharmaceutical companies still. Sure. And something that, Noreen, as you will know very well, we study a lot around speculative design in Impatient Health. This is something that we are trying to bring to our industry more. And this is really just one of those phylogenetic trees on its side. So you start with the existing situation on the left, or the problem or the present, and then we have the future on the right. And we typically just kind of stay in this vanilla zone in our industry, which I've called probable here. We stay in this kind of central thing. And what we really want is to move into the plausible first, which is perhaps the realm of sort of scenario planning, and where you might get people to try different ideas based on different environments and habitats. But really, I want to push us even further outward, right out into the possible domain, which is, of course, where we have to use our imagination. It's where we have to apply that mutation pressure, and that mutation pressure pushing us out to the edges of what might be possible. And that's the process, or a process, speculative design, that helps us get out there and to avoid these vanilla, me too, same old solutions, and applies and allows us to develop more forward. And I'm a huge fan of agility. I think agility is absolutely essential for an uncertain world, but agility and other iterative design methods, as you can see at the bottom, they're not enough. They're not enough to drive us outside of this core zone. It's very easy to stay within that vanilla zone unless we do it. And we have to think of the future as a plural item, not just a single. So that's, why I do it. And I think the automotive industry, many of you will have seen me talk about this before. I think the automotive industry does this very well. They don't leave their ideas hanging on a flip chart in a boardroom somewhere. They actually spend millions of dollars building out their concepts, their ideas, and they bring them to a public audience, and they get those true reactions and true understanding of what actually works as a result, even though none of these concepts are realistic. And it's really interesting to me that every single car company does this. And I think it shows. There's the British contingent. Well done, Rolls-Royce. I mean, how does that thing even drive, right? Yeah. So I think we need to be a bit more like the automotive industry in terms of finding ways to be innovative. And as those innovators said at the beginning, not necessarily relying on market research. I would even argue that we're now in the age of the non-expert going forward. It's an age where we can't rely on our own expertise and what we've done in the past to actually inform what it is that we're going to do in the future. I think that far too many of our leaders still think of themselves as Julius Caesar, and they literally have to give the thumbs up or the thumbs down according to their whims, according to their experience on a daily basis. I don't think that's the job of leadership anymore. The job of leadership is much more about bringing unusual or interesting ideas to the market and let the market decide whether or not things should fail or succeed. And to do so, obviously, in a very inexpensive and rapid way, such that we can actually get more throughput, get more ideas out there. So that's a massive part of it. Yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, you've talked about, kind of the thumbs up and thumbs down that sort of the market gives. And you've done your own predictions of kind of building these alternative realities, of building these sort of different possible futures for the world of pharma and life sciences. So, I know there's a bit where you talk about what happened last year? Was it a yay or a nay? How did the market sort of influence?
I am just coming to that. Don't you worry. The last point I was going to make was, we call ourselves scientific companies, but science involves true curiosity and experimentation. And I just think that we need to be scientists outside of R&D, not within it. And obviously, curiosity is such a big part of that. We have to free our mind and remember that sometimes the rules do not apply, the ones that we're used to. So obviously, just wanted to get Matrix in there. And yeah, I've come up with some rules of how to predict. Don't worry about it. Predicting is more important than the prediction. I actually expect that most of the stuff I come up with will be wrong, and I'm totally comfortable with that, and everyone else should be too. Don't apologize. The future is very important to think about. It takes part in every business plan that we write. And finally, Noreen, and by the way, these are the exact same rules that I had last year. Don't bore everyone. Invite a host that's way cooler than you. That's you, by the way. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Well, you have slipped through that, but I will say that that number 3 is what I'm here for. So we'll make sure that we keep the audience entertained.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, in order to predict the future, as you said, you do have to be informed a little bit by what you thought and how that's changed. So, tell us about 2022. What were your predictions? How did you fare?
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm sure that everybody wants to see me slip up, so I will give everyone that opportunity. So just before I start, it's important to note that the word of the year, according to Collins Dictionary, is permacrisis. So that's the background, of course, that we were all working on. And yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked at everyone else's words of the year yet, but we'll have a think of our own at the end of this, maybe as well, Noreen. But yeah, sure. Permacrisis is apparently the chosen one. So did Paul win or lose? And you might remember, I think I'm going to, I am going to pull back the bring back the animations that I think everybody enjoyed from last year. So if I got it wrong, it was pretty serious for me. I actually, as you can see, look at my head. There we go. Lost my head. Fail. Oh, wow. And if I succeeded, then my smile grew a little bit. There we go. Lovely. There we go. So we'll use the same animation as last year. Fortunately, no one's destroyed my reputation. So last year, by the way, I did 2 wins, 3 not yets, and 3 losses. So yeah, I lost last year. Overall failure. I'm expecting to lose again, but let's see. That's
part of the game.
So these are my predictions from 2022 as a quick reminder. There are 10 of them. I'll try and go through them pretty quickly. I will obviously have to explain briefly what they were in some cases. So first one, pharma goes digital native. This was all about the rise of Gen Z. Gen Z, obviously a generation that don't remember the traditional form of how we did anything. They don't have that pining to see a doctor in real life. They don't remember what that was like. So they are digital native. And my belief was that pharma would strongly go in this direction as well. I would actually say that pharma's product launches that were digital only were actually pretty much a failure, and a lot of people have actually pulled away from trying to do digital only launches, recognizing that there is still very much a place for the offline still as we go about our work and as people move back offline. So I would say that I failed on this one, I'm afraid. Yeah, that's the first start. Yeah, so there we go. Fail. So the score is 0-1.
Right.
Second one was Amazon buys Teva. I think we all know the answer to whether or not that happened or not. Well, you know what was really frustrating with this one? So obviously Amazon didn't buy Teva. I still think that there are some smart reasons why it could or could do that. But Amazon did buy another company called, let's just kill myself, did buy another company called One Medical, which irritatingly was actually something that I had said in my predictions. And when I had a chat with somebody just before the session last year, they said, oh, that's really lame. It's not going to be that. So I upgraded it to be something. Of course, no one's going to believe me, obviously, but I'm going to claim that I got something wrong. Don't worry, I'm not going to give I'm not going to give myself a score.
I think you get the win. You've got
I didn't know. No one will believe me. Anyway, I should stick to my guns. That's what I've learned. So the third one is called Biotech Bursts. I think everyone again will agree with me that I got this one right. Hooray. So back in December 2020, 2020, when I wrote these predictions, that was definitely not the case. People were valuing biotech very highly, and there was a great excitement about how many of these companies, there was SPACs were in the middle of their heyday, etc. But that really very much has soured really right from the beginning of 2022 onwards. So there we go. I get a score finally.
Here we go.
Fourth one was pharma's reputation hits where it hurts. And what I was actually talking about here was the response to the AMC and GameStop phenomenon that you might remember, the ability for people to, for the first time, move markets just by coalescing their interests online. You might remember that this was heavily done on Reddit boards back in late 2020, and very much moved markets and destroyed some hedge funds as people tried to manipulate the market, and they were very successful. And I thought that this was going to usher in a new era of sort of consumer ability to push companies with a bad reputation into artificially lower market prices. So I thought this was, just a phenomenon that was just beginning. In actual fact, whilst the GameStop saga still carries on, as you'll know if you've watched the Netflix documentary on it, it still continues to this day, but it hasn't really spread. I thought it would hit industries that have a reputation in interest. And of course, I thought pharma might be in the crosshairs as a result of that. So once again, I have to say I have failed to predict that one correctly. All these things could still happen, but probably not.
I think that one's a not yet, though, isn't it? It's a little bit
just too generous.
When rather than if. I don't know. I feel like you should give yourself the benefit of the doubt there. One to watch for the next year.
Thank you. Well, I'm harsher than I need to be, maybe. But anyway, I still don't think I'm going to win. So the beginning of the end of the commercial team, and I've actually stolen a graphic here from a webinar that I took part in back in October on this very subject. I'm not going to explain myself on this one, but I'm going to give myself a win. That will all come clear in a minute because I will be explaining myself, I promise. All right. I do genuinely believe that this has started, that our commercial teams are going to suffer a little bit. Yes. If I screwed up on my slides, I probably have here. Anyway, that's supposed to be a win rather than a fail. Oh, I've gone backwards. This is what happens when you do your slides in a big rush. You screw it up. Ah, there we go. We're going backwards. We're going, I don't know. Oh, that's why I'm pressing the wrong button, aren't I?
Revisiting all our losses.
Yeah, guess who didn't get much sleep last night? Okay, so finally I'm going in the right direction. I would say,
yeah, definitely a win. I mean, I know where we're headed with this, but I agree, our commercial teams have seen a lot of a hit in the last year, and that's going to potentially continue.
Absolutely. So number 6 was nationalism as the path to health equity. Okay, so I have to explain this a little bit. So vaccine nationalism in particular is obviously something that took, where I live in the UK, it was a huge amount of, we've come up with a great vaccine. I imagine in the US it was very strong as well. And obviously that desire to kind of keep it for the country's citizens, particularly if they had a hand in their own vaccine development, obviously seen in China and Russia as well. That obviously created huge inequity globally. But what I was arguing was that the nationalist approach would create health equity within each country and actually serve as a trigger point for other medicines and for other treatments to actually be created and distributed on a more equitable basis within countries themselves. So a bit of a sort of nuanced one, this one. And I have actually spent quite a lot of time in the last few days trying to study whether or not this happened. And the truth is that the data is appalling. Even the WHO haven't got any conclusive information over this. Of course, there's plenty of reports like this one about the vaccine national on global health, which is what I just talked about as being obviously very, very poor equity-wise, but within countries, not so much analysis as yet. So I'm going to give myself a not yet for that one because it's very inconclusive. I hope you're okay with that, Noreen?
I'm happy with that, and I was going to say that's going to be a not yet for a little while in my in my skeptic brain, but yes.
Okay, good. Cool. Well, by the way, if anyone has any comments on this, they think I'm an idiot, think I'm a lunatic, probably do already, but do use the chat window as much as you can. Reimagining Medicine, a psychedelic power trip. So this was all about, I was bastardizing the Novartis tagline here, which is, of course, Reimagine Medicine, into all the psychedelics world and how that is going to be an impactful thing. And you've got companies that I talked about last year, like Atai Life Sciences, and then you've got their share price as to what actually happened since the picture on the left. That's the 18-month overlook, down 86%. So on the one hand, this looks pretty poor. The market has certainly lost a lot of confidence in the psychedelic world. But actually, when you look underneath the sort of headlines and you talk to the people involved, it's actually all still going pretty well. One of the most important studies run by an organization called MAPS, that's not the Medical Affairs Society, that's something different, which has actually completed a second phase 3 trial showing an incredible 69% efficacy rates, incredibly positive there. I also was fortunate to go to have a meeting with the CEO of Compass, Kabir Nath, just a few weeks ago, where he told me about some of the work that he's doing, and actually underlying it looks pretty positive still. So I'm going to give myself another not yet. I think the world has got a mixed view here on the world here. Obviously, I hope it will progress. I think it's going to be very important as long as it manages to shake off the old sort of Woodstock image of old and to be considered a serious medicine going forward.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Cool. Number 8, Elon Musk gets into pharma. Now, it's funny.
Got into a lot more than that, right?
Elon Musk, at about this time last year, had just been named the Time Person of the Year, you might recall.
Wow.
A few things have happened since then. Yeah, I think we all know what happened with Elon Musk in 2022. He did not go into pharma. By the way, there were some sensible reasons for this. He was quite involved in doing some manufacturing work around the COVID vaccine. And he, of course, as you know, has his Neuralink company, which is trying to produce a brain-human interface to get rid of what he calls the inefficiency of having to actually use your hands to do things when you can just use your brain and think them instead. Sure. Making some progress, but a fail, I think we can all agree. Okay, it's not looking very good, is it? It's 2 to 4, not doing well.
I was going to say, I don't know, Paul. It could go either way. We've got 2 more to go, so you could just
What do you reckon?
I'm rooting for you, but
thank you, Noreen. Thank you. Just because you're working with me. So no code breeds new entrepreneurs and patient pioneers. No code is a movement. Probably if you're not familiar with it, an easy way of understanding it is to think Squarespace. Is that right? Squarespace, yeah, the website creates. Basically, it's the ability to create websites with Squarespace, but more sophisticated apps, tools in a digital world by using no code. You don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to be a computer expert. You just have to know what you want it to do. And I thought that this could usher in a new wave of entrepreneurs and patient pioneers who could obviously use these new tools and technologies, much of which is very inexpensive, to build their own solutions and actually rival and channel. I mean, I see so much patient pioneering work as it is. So I just thought this would add rocket fuel to that. And when I did my research on this over the holiday period, I did see a lot of companies that are getting involved in this space and a lot of sort of pilots and early projects that are going on to actually create things. But actually, pretty much everything I can see is internally. It's like how to improve commercial, clinical, all of the departments within our companies, and very little of it to do with actual patient or external development. And so for this one, I'm going to have to give myself another not yet. I don't think that the movement has got anywhere as much as I hoped, but there are a lot of green shoots. Fair?
Okay. Fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. We are headed in that direction, which is great to know, but more work.
And what this means, of course, is that I cannot win. Oh, well. Did you really expect me to? The final one, the rise of synthetic data. Now, I am still very bullish about synthetic data. It has been used quite a lot over the last year. I wrote about it just recently on LinkedIn, and I got a whole bunch of messages from people saying, yeah, we're doing it to inform various pilots, etc. And, we've seen quite a lot of headlines, shall we say, a couple of here from Fierce. Aetion bought their first acquisition, Replica Analytics, which specializes in synthetic data. MD Clone managed to raise 63 million for a synthetic data analysis platform. But there's always a but. I don't think that headlines like this really mean very much. It doesn't evidence that we're actually using it. Obviously, I'm not expecting huge progress until regulatory bodies signal they are going to be interested in it. But just in case you haven't clocked on to synthetic data, this is artificially created data that you can use for real world situations. They're not just the control arms. They represent the real data. They're a fascinating piece of technology. And the wondrous thing in this industry, pharma, is that, of course, it's not real patient data. You don't have to worry about patient privacy concerns. You don't have to worry about many of the compliance concerns. So if you can get realistic data that doesn't actually connect to individual patients, that could be a game changer. You can see why I was quite bullish about this and still am. And the fact that it is being used even in pilot form, to me, shows a lot. Heavy use in the world of credit card fraud and in the world of self-driving cars, because we need to train the AI on these rare events, but we need more and more training data. We need to do the same in pharma. We need to train our systems on adverse events, which obviously we hope to be rare, but the computer needs to understand them. So yeah, another not yet.
Not yet.
Out with
Not
a whimper. Yet. I know, not as exciting as the World Cup. Paul loses 2-4.
The positive is that if we take the not yet as future wins, because we're still holding on to these predictions, you do win out. And I see there's a huge Paul fan club in the chat, and so everyone is rooting for you, Paul. So I think that means that you're still headed in the right direction, right? They're not.
Thank you.
They're a bit crazy and out there, but they are getting us to where we want to be going. So how do we continue exploring this? I know you've got something that you call Pharmageddon, is that right? So tell us a little bit about how you want to continue.
I do indeed. So a few select people may have heard of this already. But what I'd like to do for the first time ever in 2 years of running this company is do a little bit of a kind of ad break, if that's okay with everybody, because when most of you know that I was running I for Pharma, which became Reuters Events in my previous role, and I kind of vowed never again to run large events when I left in 2020. I'd done 17 years, and I thought that was plenty. But I have started to feel very strongly that the world of large events hasn't evolved with the pandemic. We're constantly, telling us that, we'll never go back. Well, it seems that the world of events is trying to go back, and I find it very frustrating. So I've decided that this year, you and I, Noreen, and the rest of our wonderful team are going to put on an event that we are calling, exactly as you just said, Pharmageddon. It's a new event. It's going to be in Barcelona this year. It's going to happen on May 24th and 25th. It will be ticketed, but as a result of being here and watching this live, I can see all of you guys who are interested in coming to that will receive a discount. I haven't, because I've been busy writing predictions, set up the website yet. So the way in which you can receive this discount is actually pretty lo-fi. Send me an email. Paul@impatient.health. I really should have put that on the screen. Maybe someone can write it in the chat window for me. Paul@impatient.health. If you are interested in attending on May 24th, 25th, it's going to be, well, there's not really going to be any presentations, and there's not going to be any exhibitions. So it's going to be much more of a working session over 2 days where we're going to build and create things. Like, it really frustrates me that when you go to conferences, everyone sits there passively in the room, and there's so much brain power that's not being used, such a waste. Let's get together and form teams and to build some quite outlandish and ambitious projects that we might never get the chance to do within our four walls on an ordinary day, and actually come together. It's going to feel a little bit like a hackathon, but it's going to be for executives, and there's also going to be patients and HCPs in the room involved in the teams as well. So I'm hoping that will be an exciting thing to look forward to. So
Paul, maybe we can use some of your not yets to build those out.
Maybe we can be proven wrong over the course of that. That's a good idea. Thank you.
I love it. Great. So I have successfully, I'm going back to rule number 3 of this session, successfully maneuvered us back on time and kept us hopefully headed towards what we're all waiting for, which is What the hell are this year's predictions? Tell us what's going on. What are the
Fair
thoughts?
enough,
There's
fair
a lot of
enough.
chat.
I'm sure people were enjoying sticking me in the dirt with my failures of old. So, okay, yes. So predictions 2023, and I have to confess, I was not fully 100% well over the holiday break. So these are not quite as well formed as you may be used to in previous years. And I've not even had a chance to check my slides. So there's probably going to be some mistakes. I hope you can forgive me on that if it does happen. Okay. I also want to say thank you, though, to a little group of people who got together just before the holiday break, which I've called the predictors. These are people who have volunteered. Either they were people who read the report that I wrote of last year's predictions right down to the end, where I put in a little Easter egg, and people were able to become part of this secret group. It's not very secret anymore, really, is it? We also had a few people who joined later in the year through social media, etc., who wanted to be part of this. So we had a great brainstorming session. So massive thanks to all of those who helped. But yes, into the predictions, and I'm afraid it doesn't start on a very happy note. First one is called the Bonfire of Big Pharma. No one's going to accuse me of being dramatic, are they? But what I'm actually predicting here is a very specific number, 20% cut to commercial. Okay. Wow. Okay. So a lot of people have probably just said, that's not very nice. That's where I work. But I do genuinely believe that the writing is on the wall. And I have been doing a lot of interviews with C-level people in the last couple of months to find out the truth. Obviously, we are familiar with Novartis's cuts, but in many ways, I think it's a disease that's going to catch, and we're going to see a lot of cuts going across our commercial departments this year, not just to the sales reps, which is what I predicted last year, but at HQ and senior levels as well. I hear so many quotes like this: when whiteboarding the launch of new specialty medicines, and of course we all know that our industry is focused increasingly on specialty medicines, we recognize that the way that we're structured and scaled today is the exact opposite. I've clearly missed out a word, see, haven't proofed my slides, the exact opposite of what is desirable. I hear statements like this all the time. I believe very specifically that by the end of 2023, we will see a 20% cut in permanent staff in commercial HQ and country positions. And I think we're going to see core teams driving partnership arrangements. And I'll go into that in a little bit in a moment. What I do see is an increase, though. I do see a corresponding increase in flexible working and people working in new ways. I do, of course, see rise in medical affairs. I'm very bullish on medical affairs. I believe it's increasingly important part of our organizations, including MSLs. Many, many people said to me about how their intention is to increase budget and headcount in those areas going forward. Partnership and outsourcing models will increase, but it's not going to be the same as what we've got used to in the clinical space with the CRO model. I think we're going to have a different situation from that. And what I'm actually going to do right now, Noreen, if you'll let me, is to invent a new word, a new phrase, which I'm calling CAPS. So let me explain what the hell do I mean by CAPS. So I believe we're going to see commercial adaptive partnerships going forward. That sounds like a piece of pharma jargon, doesn't it? So what the hell do I mean? It's essentially what I think will have typically two partners, one of which is the originator or the owner of the drug, so a pharma company typically, or a biotech, and one is a sort of vendor company, but they are not working on a fee-for-service basis anymore. They're working on a profit share on an incentivized fee arrangement with low or no upfront cash payments. So that's very, very important because of how these units will actually be managed going forward. And we do see this happening, by the way. There are green shoots of this happening already. So the one partner, as I said, is the medicine owner and the originator on one side. That's typically the pharma or the biotech company. We hear so many stories about how, in launch situations, there's a delay in the regulatory climate or maybe the HTA decisions, and where, people have had to build out commercial teams, but they're sitting doing nothing for months because of unexpected situations. We've obviously got just increasing pressure on the ROI that we're delivering across all of these teams. And we've got a situation where biotech companies are desperate right now because they've been unable to go to the capital markets to build their own commercial units, if that's what they want to do. They're very low valuations, so they don't want to sell out to big pharma if they can possibly help it. And they're looking for a third way, an alternative. They want to find a way of retaining ownership of their products, building a commercial operation, but not actually to build it themselves, to be able to enter into one of these caps in order to be able to do that and to work with commercial providers on a risk-sharing, profit-sharing basis. So that's where I think it'll be really key. On the commercializing group, they're going to have to be a large provider. They're going to have to be one of the familiar names that we're working with, large-scale providers, because these, or they need to be a kind of coalition. They need to be part, they need to have agency, they need to have contract sales, they need to have technology solutions, and they have to be very well capitalized to be able to work on a profit share or incentivized basis. But they do still, of course, need to be managed well. They need to have a single point of management within them. And they need to be able to perform that flexibility. They need to be willing to scale up and down their staff on an immediate basis, more so even than the world in clinical. And they, of course, need to have experience in specific therapy areas, which, of course, are more and more sophisticated. So they have to be real industry experts. So these sorts of arrangements, I can see the green shoots of it happening already. And I think we're going to see a lot more of these kind of coalitions or large-scale providers actually offering this and working with companies on a much more partnered basis than a client vendor basis.
And Paul, do you think this is kind of what gets us to actually looking at value-based care, outcomes-based care? I mean,
that is a very interesting question, and it's not something I've thought about massively, but I believe that the main reasons for the lack of value-based care are more external than internal. Yes, we can blame ourselves, but we blame ourselves because we've been unable to work out the proper working mechanisms for working with external organizations in assessing and managing that value, and just thus being able to afford it. So yes and no is the answer to your question. Okay. I'm going to come out with that a lot.
Not yet.
I'm not going to go through these because it's going to take too long, but I do see that there are some other features of the caps that I think can be far better organized. We can actually make some of the agile and customer-centric approaches work. We can make sure that we're using the validated learning model, which we unfortunately don't do very well right now. And all of those things will be much better manageable inside one of these arrangements, where we can be more politics-free and more fluid in terms of our management approach.
Okay.
I also think that a large part of my rather dastardly prediction here is coming from the tech world, and we're all very familiar with what's happened at Twitter. I've already alluded to it earlier. 4,400 roles were cut, more than 50% in the space of just a few weeks upon arrival. Now, most of us average normal people, I'm calling myself that, even though I know I'm very much a weirdo, kind of look at this with horror, don't we? The idea of Elon Musk as our boss right now sounds pretty frightening, pretty horrific. But you've also got to remember that there's a lot of people who work in Silicon Valley who are probably going to look up to this. They've seen that you can run a company with less employees. And when you look at the share price losses of the major technology companies over the last year or so, you can see that they're under a lot of pressure to perform, and that in many cases have already started to cull their workforces. They're going to see what's been done at Twitter as an influencer, a positive thing that they can emulate. So we in pharma may not want to, we may not be inspired by Elon Musk or by Twitter, but what we might be inspired about is the sort of intermediate tier of tech companies and others who will try and recognize that they can run and operate on this kind of basis, and that this kind of tech sludge that is going to be created over the coming year is actually going to be quite influential. How can we have the same great taste, i.e. massive reduction in headcount and cost with fewer calories, revenue loss? This is what you're going to hear in every tech boardroom in 2023. And I think it will be more catching than people think. So number 2, and I'm just going to push ahead here because otherwise we are definitely going to run out of time. Do please comment. I will be reading all comments, if not now, later on for sure. I just realized we were going to ask people a question, weren't we? We forgot to do that. Might come back to that later.
I think we do it in the middle of the predictions. Okay, so whilst we're kind of percolating on the future, maybe we can ask folks about what their thoughts are as well. Does that work for you, Paul?
Okay. Well, this one's a bit of a cheat one anyway, because it's kind of an extension of the first prediction. Basically, what I'm saying is that mega mergers are over. There was a long period, lasted probably 2 entire decades, where scale was something desirable that pharma companies would seek. And that's one of the reasons why you obviously saw such huge mega mergers. Some of you who've been around for as many years as I have will remember in 2014 that Pfizer tried to buy AstraZeneca for $118 billion. AstraZeneca's board rejected that offer, which a lot of people thought was a bit crazy at the time. But now look at AstraZeneca. I think their latest valuation is around $180 billion. So they've certainly done well in the intervening time. But these days almost seem sort of laughable to me now, of these kind of mega mergers that are based on large pharma companies coming together. So I don't think we're going to see any more of, these two acquisitions both happened in 2019, Celgene BMS and AbbVie Allergan. I don't think we're going to see very many of those for a while. I think that you are still going to see the big pharma rare disease pairings, which happened as recently as just 3 weeks ago with Amgen winning the race to buy Horizon Therapeutics very recently. So you're going to see, that was triggered originally, I think, by the Sanofi Genzyme. Probably people will tell me that there were previous examples before that, but that was in 2011. And then we've seen plenty of successful actual partnerships. I think it's too early to talk about AstraZeneca Alexion, but certainly many of the others have been proven already to be pretty successful. So over the course of 2023, I expect some companies to be acquired, kind of that mid-range rare disease focus. Alnylam, BioMarin, Ultragenyx, these are prime candidates for acquisition. I even think that some of the private companies, Ferring hasn't traditionally been rare focused, but they're trying to do strongly in cell and gene. Chiesi, Italian company, is rare focused. I think that could be on the chopping board. And I think that Vertex and CSL, who both have a rare disease focus, but the problem with them is they are a bit too expensive. They're valued, I think, Vertex 75 billion and CSL about 90 billion. And that's, in the current capital climate, that's a little bit difficult, I think, for people to be acquiring right now. So I think they'll probably stay independent or maybe form their own coalitions of companies going forward. So I think you're going to see.
So I see what you've done here. You've caught yourself on two predictions, haven't you? If they don't get acquired, the mega mergers end and get them on the caps. Okay, I see what's going on here, Paul. Sneaky.
Thank you.
Bomb.
Why did I employ you? It's far too smart. Okay, number 3. An apple a day keeps the doctor closer.
All right, tell me a bit more about this one.
Okay, so big tech, we always talk about like the big sort of 4 or the big 5, the FANG or the GAFA, whatever term you want to use. But actually, a lot happened in 2022. Apple actually did fade a tiny bit towards the very end of the year, but you can see that in November, they were valued at more than the combined Meta, Amazon, and Google amount. And that's largely because Apple, of course, doesn't rely on advertising or simply pure B2C consumer retail, which of course is a huge part of Amazon. Amazon, by the way, has a huge advertising arm as well that most people aren't aware of. But yeah, that has created a real detachment between Apple and everybody else. And I think that Apple, the way that it's been focused obviously on its products, is actually very well poised to enter into a brand new market. And the thing about having such a huge share price, Noreen, is it's not just based on today's value. Share prices are obviously based on future value. And when you've got such a lofty value, you have to live up to it. You have to expand. And there is only one sector in the world that has the degree of margins and the degree of disruptive need that needs to enter it. So it's not a question of when Apple goes into healthcare, it's just a matter of how. And it absolutely is, in my opinion, going to become, like these other companies on the left, a health insurer going forward, at least in a small way. And I believe that it'll actually do this, obviously having its secret superpower of all of your health data and being able to understand, therefore, your prognosis going forward. But I also think it could employ a model a little bit like how Tesla has done when it comes to insurance. So Tesla obviously are cars that have a huge number of sensors in them. They have, all of these different things. They have huge amounts of, and they can actually judge how good a driver you are. So when Tesla brought out its insurance markets, of course, it was able to select which drivers and it should focus on, and it was able to offer better premiums to those who were judged as good drivers. Basically, all of the sensors combining to create a safety score, and that safety score then leading to reductions in premiums up to as much as 60% in some cases, generally around 20 to 40% for most safe drivers, but up to 60%. So I think that Apple could take a very interesting similar approach. It actually did this with the credit card markets that it entered about 3 years ago. And I think that it could be really interesting to see how it could, probably in partnership with an existing health insurer to begin with, actually work its way into this market gradually. I think one of the big questions. Sorry, go on.
Do you think they're going to have like health scores, like similar to how we have, people have talked to Black Mirror episode about like social credit scores? It's just going to be scores upon scores upon scores, which then dictate your premium.
Yes, that score may not be visible to you, as it isn't on some services either. But it may, you may not even know if you're getting a good deal or not. But it is going to allow them to enter in a more nuanced manner.
Okay, interesting. Now, what does that mean for big markets like China or India, where the insurance system is just a bit different than
this is very much applied to an American market only at the moment. Sorry, I should have made that very clear at the beginning. Obviously, yes, you are absolutely right. And obviously, I can't see Apple entering the Chinese healthcare market anytime soon, given the situations that we see there. But perhaps improving itself in this new space, it can find itself, maybe not to Chinese markets, but certainly in European markets. I could see some progress being made. It doesn't necessarily have to become an insurer to replace the others. It can almost come as a layer on top of an existing insurance service. It doesn't have to even therefore apply to be an insurer in some cases if it's only going on that top level. And in many ways, it kind of already is. You pay out of your own pocket for health services from Apple right now, whether it be the wellness or devices like the Apple Watch, etc. So absolutely. Interesting. Apple is basically becoming more and more a service company, if you haven't realized. It's actually grown its service business from about 20 to 30% over the course of the last year as well. So absolutely driving that.
Now, Paul, I will say, before we jump into this one, I want to make sure that we still get that question.
Oh, right. Yep. Question.
Our audience.
I can do a question. This is a very, very simple question. We actually only came up with it just before we started. But basically, I'd love to just get everyone's quick view on how positive they feel about the fortunes of pharma in 2023. Probably should have asked this before I smashed down everyone saying that 20% cuts on the commercial side. But I can see a lot of good answers coming in already. Just a nice litmus test. We've got a lot of people on the call here. It'd be nice to just get a wisdom of the crowd, wouldn't it? I can see that half of you have voted already, the alert half. I'm glad to see I've not bored people to sleep just yet. I'll hold this open another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so it turns out that 3/4 of you are still listening. That's good. Here are the results of the poll. So you guys are more optimistic than me. Good.
Which is good. Someone's got to be right, Paul.
Yes, exactly. 53%, so more than half people saying good, and only 2% saying terrible. So a bit of a normal distribution with a weighting towards the good.
To be fair. Okay, all right. So you are kind of pushing people towards the dark side. So let's keep going.
I am clearly more pessimistic than others. I apologize, everybody. Okay. Good. I believe I'm quite evidence-based on that prediction. But anyway, right, let's carry on, shall we? As my God, we've only got 9 minutes. Can you believe it? So, new drug firms from Bytes and Bits. What on earth am I talking about here?
This one took me a minute. Yeah, tell us more about this.
It's confusing. So I just think that our industry has felt itself to be bulletproof, to be kind of insulated from disruption for many years. It's very difficult for anyone who's not got a heritage as a pharma company to get into the business of creating, researching, and distributing drugs, right? And as a result, we often say we've not been on the burning platform, and in many ways, people like me try to encourage us, try to burn that platform and give people the idea that the future is safe. So what I think, though, is that this is going to change. And it's going to change because of the AI discovery drugs movement. And this has really made leaps and bounds. And I don't know if everybody's fully aware of it. In 2020, we had precisely 0 AI discovered drugs in development. And in 2022, that number has jumped to 18. So it's a pretty big shift, in case you haven't noticed. And where are those drugs actually positioned right now? You can see that the majority is still in the discovery phase, nearly 2/3, but you can see a fair few of them are entering phase 1 and even phase 2 at this point. And I even believe, it's not on this diagram, there are a small number in phase 3. And there are versions like indication improvements that have actually been approved as a result through AI. But I'm talking about original drugs here. So I really liked how this lady, Vanita, who's a general partner at VC firm Andreessen Horowitz, explained why she's so bullish still, because a lot of us have come to question what's happening in this area. We heard the headlines 5 years ago. Has it all gone flat? And this person, Vanita, explained, the biggest reason I'm excited about the application of AI in drug discovery is nature. Nature itself has created a lot of great drugs, a lot of incredible protein machinery, and a lot of great complex sequence encoded instruction manuals. So the design space, the potential for what we can do in this space, we've barely started. We've barely scrapped the surface of what is possible. Nature proves that so much more can exist. And I thought she put that very well. Gartner did some interesting predictions this year, and they believe that by 2026, drug discovery will reach an inflection point where in silico, i.e. AI-developed drug discovery strategies, overtake the traditional bench-based research in big pharma. So they are very strongly bullish on this, and they believe it's going to overtake. That's obviously partly a function of traditional research going down, as well as this new type going up. But I thought, just very quickly, just to help people understand, what's happening well in AI discovery is that it's actually been masterful in identifying molecules that bind to biological targets of interest, such as proteins. And that has really helped bring the number of possibilities into the world far better than we had before. What's not so good is that it's not been very good at understanding what happens when it enters the body. Its drug performances, of course, is context dependent, and toxicity, safety are very, very difficult to model, and it varies from human to human. And that's where AI has been unable to really push the boundaries. But the reason why I am strong on this is actually, oh, by the way, we see new companies coming in, which are actually AI just to help with the development process now, like Oaken, as you can see here. But what I think is going to be very interesting to help with this space is OOCs. Yep, oops. You heard it right. OOCs, if you're like not aware. Yeah. No, definitely not oops. But OOCs are organ on a chip. And this is very interesting because, of course, we know that animal models are used in all drug development at the moment. They are sometimes considered inhumane, but they are certainly considered expensive and slow. And also 40% of animal models do not translate to human models. So a very high rate of failure moving from one to the other. And we really need to be able to move beyond this. And what OOCs do, they actually allow us to put human organs or versions of human organs on a chip. This is an example of what they look like. And what you can't see in this diagram, but if you were to zoom in very closely, you'd actually have human tissue in the central part of that chip. And what it does is it actually it illustrates and allows us to see, not model, but actually see what is happening when a drug infusion is brought into that situation. And also what you actually can't tell either from this situation is that the chip actually gives a physical manipulation to the human tissue within it. So it sort of simulates breathing and other types of physical movement and chemical movements in this kind of micro environment, but it's actually a real environment as well. And these things are becoming really quite sophisticated now. I'm not going to obviously go through this stuff, but you can see different types of organs that are being created. You can get, if you see in the top left, you've got single OOCs chips. You've got the multi, where you want to be able to see the function on more than one. And then you even have entire sort of human bodies, which are collections of these OOCs that have been brought together to understand exactly what's happening. And these things can, of course, be produced on a mass scale, and they really help to improve that sort of throughput that we need for the AI to actually understand with the volume of potential that are coming through actually to see it in the system itself. And this actually all became quite exciting back in 2019 when a group did an academic study on the potential change in R&D costs as a result of using OOCs and modeling that based on all of the various systems that existed. So this was, nearly 3 years ago now. And we can see that within that sort of darker gray area, it's between 10 and 26% that people believe are actually going to show a reduction in R&D costs over what we have today. So again, this is somewhat dependent on the regulatory system being willing to adopt this and to accept it as part of the discovery and development process, but very strong to see how the AI combined with the OOCs could potentially open a lot of doors. And like all sort of burgeoning spaces, there are many, many companies now involved in actually creating these OOCs and pushing us forward. But quickly, just to go back to the kind of AI discovery part of this prediction, we are seeing just a gathering in terms of the number of deals being made. There are very few companies now that aren't making deals in this space. Here's just a few of them. And what we're actually seeing, there's just an illustration of the space in the AI drug discovery world. It's getting pretty strong. But if you look at what's actually happening in some of the AI companies themselves, they are now learning the ability to become pharma companies themselves. This is one, Schrödinger. So they have got multiple products across neurology, oncology, immunology, which don't have a traditional pharma partner working with them at all. They are pursuing them on their own. So what we are starting to see now, and this comes back to my story about pharma feeling insulated at the beginning, we are starting to see that new pharma companies are being born not from a chemical or biological background, but from a purely digital background. And they are going to obviously have a strong impact going forward.
Okay, Paul, we've got a challenge. And the challenge
running out of time.
We're running out of time. We've got 1 minute and maybe 3 predictions. I don't actually know where you've landed. Can I get you? And then we've got folks talking about ChatGPT. They're super interested in that. And I know that one's coming later.
That is one, but I actually, people are going to have to rely on the written report, I'm afraid, for that one. But it probably amazes people that I've got through this whole session without mentioning either the metaverse or ChatGPT and chatbots at all. Shock horror. But you can see I'm cycling through some of my slides now. I've got a whole section on virtual influencers and how I believe that they're going to be pretty strong in the pharma world going forward for multiple different reasons. I'm sorry I haven't had time to go through these, but I will just show you that prediction number 6 is ChatGPT does not revolutionize healthcare, I'm sorry to say, but there are other potential things that might have a strong influence going forward. ChatGPT is, of course, wonderful, very interesting, very exciting, but a bit of a bullshit creator and very dangerous in so many ways in our space. And I've also got a prediction on anti-aging. The first anti-aging drug is approved. I'm sorry that we haven't had a chance to go through those today. I promise that the written version of this, I will write it as fast as I can. I've already written most of it, and I will get it to you as quickly as I possibly can. And then you can feast on those. So yeah, that leads us to the final thing, which is just the word of the year.
Amazing. And I will say, folks have already asked for a part 2. So it seems that, there's been a lot of progress and lots of thoughts coming around for 2023. And we did want to ask everyone what your word of the year is. So feel free to put it in the chat. We do have one announcement from my side, and then I think Paul will wrap up. Just another plug again for Pharmageddon.
Yes, and there was a point I forgot to mention on that, by the way.
Yeah.
It's ticketed for pharma, but if you are a non-pharma company, you can take part, but not as a sort of single ticket person. You need to get in touch with us and work out how you can be involved in that, because we are trying to make it a world without vendor presentations and pitches and exhibition stands. And it's going to be a wonderful event. And yes, you can be involved, but talk to us about how.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Paul, for whizzing through at 205 kilometers an hour, I think, something crazy like that, and getting us through this. I'm really looking forward to the report. Thank you to everyone that took the time to stay the extra minute as well. We will discuss a part 2. Let's see
what's your word of the year, Noreen? What's your word of the year?
What's my word of the year? Oh, I said to you impatient, and I think that's just a bit
Impatient.
cheesy.
That is just too corny.
But
have
I
that.
did think about this last night, and I think flow. I think
Oh,
flow
okay.
in all respects, right? Go with the
Love
flow,
it.
but also flow of the system, of, you know, just trying to make things flow. So that's mine. What's
I
yours,
like
Paul?
it. I haven't got a clue. Maybe Farmageddon. That's even more cheesy.
Farmageddon.
I'm looking forward to reading everyone else's. I was too busy making predictions. I didn't have time to think about this. Can I think on the spot?
You've got a little bit of time.
I don't know. I feel like the word for me is life. Life, because I feel like it obviously describes our industry, but it's something that I want to give to myself a little bit more. I've been pushing the boundaries of sleep a little bit too much recently, and need to make sure I bring some of my life back. So
balance.
Balance is not a bad one either. Balance is pretty good. Yeah, I'm not very good at that. I've got this weird belief that that'll come later.
There we go. Well, someone in the chat said life flow, so we'll put it all together.
Very good. I love it.
The life flow. Brilliant. Thank you again, Paul, for these predictions. We're really looking forward to it. Thank you to everyone for staying on. We are really looking forward to seeing you in the next session, Farmageddon. Paul, anything that you want to say before we sign off?
No, I should probably mention that Impatient Health is doing some amazing work right now. And if you guys want to work with us on anything, we are doing some really cool projects to advance that speculative design stuff that you spoke about earlier, that I spoke about earlier. And we're actually doing exactly what I wanted to do, which was to work on some genuinely needle moving projects in this industry. And it's a privilege to be able to do that. So if you feel that you've got projects, ideas, or want to work on things that are outside of that vanilla zone, then you should come and talk to us.
I love it. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Our emails in chat, reach out, and hopefully see you all soon again.
Happy New Year, everybody. I hope it's better than I predicted. All right. Thanks so much. Thank you, Nurin.
Thanks,
all right,
everyone.
bye, everybody. Bye.